everybody, and welcome to our quest. Back in 2020, we started this podcast to help parents with everything business and lifestyle. And over time, we have found ourselves to have evolved into everything parenting and mental health. So, today we have something really interesting with a very special guest, where we are going to dive deep into understanding how parenting within the womb can make a huge difference into the nervous system of the baby and affect the rest of the life of the child, even as a grown adult. This is now proven through science. It has the wisdom from ancient practices, and it shows how the nervous system can be wired, how the emotions can be regulated, how parenting can be done right from conception. So, without much delay, here we are. Hi, Ayushi. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
All well here. I would like to first of all thank you for making out time for this and being here to enlighten the listeners with the amazing knowledge that you have regarding inculcating values for kids within the womb. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It is honestly my honor that I can share whatever little I know with how many ever viewers and listeners are watching this. I hope to make a positive impact and I hope I can just share a little of my knowledge with everybody.
Thank you. Would you first like to let the people know about your journey as a mother, how you decided to be a mother, or how your experience has been in regards to motherhood?
Well, my journey with motherhood has been exceptionally good. Just like most mothers, I've had to go through everything that a mother usually does go through in terms of stress, in terms of getting to know your body, so many changes in your body, the first pregnancy, how will it be, everything. But the end note that you have your child with you and you know that you are so powerful in the life of one little person and you're almost in a way shaping the world and changing the world with this baby. It's such a beautiful thought and that's what gave me strength throughout my pregnancy.
It's really, really beautiful. How old is your kid now?
He is 2.3 years old.
Amazing. And would you like to let the people know what brought you into the concept of inculcating values right from conception or when you had the baby in your womb?
So I have been with my guru who would tell me, even before I was pregnant, who would tell me about the importance of having to give values to your child when he's in the womb. And I would help other mothers as well in their journey. But it was never personal for me. And then when I finally did the Garbh Sanskar course, which is a very ancient Indian tradition that we have been following for ages, it really changed my perspective and my life on how these values really impact the baby. And for 2.3 years now, I've been experiencing the bliss of it, and it is wonderful.
That's amazing. And with that, shall we dive deep into it?
Yes, of course, right away.
Okay, great. So I would like to ask you first that, like you explained, that your guru had always explained the importance of it. Would you share why is the conditioning of the mind of the child so important from pregnancy?
Well, the conditioning of a child's mind during pregnancy, it plays a very crucial role in shaping their cognitive, emotional, and even behavioral patterns. The baby inside the womb grasps everything that the mother sees, hears, eats, tastes, experiences. So, basically, the fetal brain development and neuroplasty, according to modern science, also tells us that the mother's environment is what shapes the genes and the gene expression of the baby. A baby may be born with a certain gene, but what becomes expressive and what does not, it's all in the hands of the mother. And that's why it is so important.
So it can be shaped even if the genes are carrying certain traits already.
Absolutely. What the mother thinks for the baby, what the mother does, what kind of emotions she goes through, what kind of nutrition she takes, everything plays a role, a big role in shaping the baby's not only the present but the future as well.
Is it only in regards to what the mother is thinking about the baby or what the mother is thinking in general when she's carrying the baby?
In general. So there was this really famous experiment that was done where a baby was in the womb, a 25-week-old fetus was in the womb, and the mother was getting the sonography done, and different images which portrayed different emotions, which encouraged different emotions, were shown to the mother. And whenever the mother saw the images of something happy or something sad or something angry, frustrated, everything was reciprocated with the baby within seconds. So it was almost as if the baby was seeing those images and not the mother. So it's not just in terms of what you think about the baby, but just generally in terms of what you're feeling generally, just not for the baby, but even otherwise. Like, so that's why they say that the mother always needs to be happy and the mother always needs to, be in a good state of mind.
Right. Although life has its own challenges, right? I mean, it's really challenging to be happy in general, that too when you're hormonal with pregnancy.
Yes, of course. Well, stress is not just, I mean, people say that it's really that a mother should always be happy, but sometimes you cannot avoid stress, right? You cannot change certain things. Certain things are just out of your hands. But the impact that it has on the baby is true. So, what should a mother do in such a time? It's not practical that a mother can be happy all the time. So, what can she do? She can help stabilize the baby emotionally by just when you're in a certain situation, the mother could just put a hand on the baby and just tell them that, listen, this is not for you right now, so you just don't grasp any of this that's going on around you. The idea that a pregnant woman should be happy all the time is well intended, but it's a little unrealistic, because as you said, life comes with its challenges. There's emotional ups and downs, there's unexpected stress, and pregnancy does not shield a woman from all of this. However, what truly matters is not the absence of stress, but how a mother processes and manages her emotions. Science emphasizes that while external circumstances may not be in our control, what we can control is our internal response to what is happening externally. Rather than striving for being constantly happy, you should have a sustainable approach, and you should be able to balance your emotions well. Do not negate your emotions, do not invalidate them. Always validate what you're feeling, but don't extend it, don't prolong it for long periods of time, because lack creates lack. Right? Sometimes we just spiral down a rabbit hole over how bad our life is at the slightest of inconvenience. What we should do is we should not dwell on those things which can't be changed, and we should just try to look at the brighter side of life. We should always try to look at the glass which is half full. Here, self awareness, when mother experiences stress, she can acknowledge their emotions and then process it and redirect her focus to something that makes her happy, like maybe a hobby like painting or meditating or chanting or listening to music. Anything that makes her happy will make the baby happy.
Right. So that's actually a very important point that you've highlighted, that one doesn't have to be devoid of stress or devoid of feelings which are difficult. It's about getting your emotions back in your, let's say, control, so to say, regulating back your nervous system, navigating the difficult emotions, and getting yourself back into the regulated, relaxed state, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, having understood that, what are the things that can be conditioned for a baby at that early stage?
When conditioning of the baby goes to the sky's the limit. Whatever you think of, the baby can be conditioned in that way. You can condition the cognitive development and the intelligence of the baby. You can condition the emotional stability, mental health, nourishment, the body of the baby, everything. There are many tools to do so. Every thing that you want to help for the baby comes with different tools. Like I already said, there's reading good literature, there's scriptures, there's storytelling, there's color therapy, there is sounds, there is even talking to the baby. It's called talking to the baby in the womb. So you have to address the baby as an individual who is yours, but is not per se for you. It's an individual of its own, right? So you have to nurture what the baby wants. That's why a pregnant woman has cravings when she's pregnant. Like it's the baby's way of telling you that even though you might not like this, mama, I like it. So why don't you try this for me? So you have to understand that the baby is an entire entity by himself or herself. So you have to nurture and grow the baby according to that. and there are many tools to do so.
I totally believe in what you're saying, but one might argue that even when an infant is born, they have the capacity to, process only so much. Even their sight and all is not fully developed when they are newborn. So for some people, it can be difficult to fathom that a baby in the womb can actually absorb so much in. Do you have something to comment?
Absolutely. Sometimes every new mom would know that a baby is more resilient than we give it credit for. The baby can take more than what we give them credit for. And even the baby in the womb, the baby within 5 weeks has neural tubes forming within its body, within the fetus. By 24 weeks of gestation period, the baby can listen to and distinguish between the mothers and the voice of the others. The baby can understand what the father or the mother is trying to tell them and reciprocate accordingly. This proves that the baby forms memory at such an early age. So, like I said, the sky is the limit, and sometimes we kind of try to underestimate even ourselves and even the babies. They are capable of much more than we can think of. That's why when the baby is born, it immediately reacts to the mother's body. Mother's body, fine, understandable because the baby was in the mother, but the baby immediately reacts to the father's voice in the body. How? That's because it has memory, it processes and it knows that these are my primary caregivers and these are the people that I need to find and cling to.
Right, right. That totally makes sense. And I would also like to highlight the little moment where you shared that the baby comes through you and not to you. And the baby is a full person on its own, even though the baby's so tiny. So I totally agree with you there. Circling back to what we were discussing just before this, when the mother is going through stressful situations in life during pregnancy, and we expect the mother to be well regulated and, in charge of her emotions, having her emotional resilience. Are there any tools or tips that you would share that pregnant mothers could follow to make sure that they are conditioning the baby's mind in a healthy way?
Absolutely. The baby absorbs the mother's emotions through the hormones that are released in the body of the mother, like cortisol and oxytocin. Cortisol, which is the stress hormone, oxytocin, which is the love hormone. The mother who practices mindfulness, gratitude, and maybe positive affirmations can imprint calmness and confidence in that baby. On the other hand, if there is chronic stress during the pregnancy, it can lead to risks of anxiety, emotional dysregulation, ADHD in the child. As we all know the story of Abhimanyu in the womb, there was in Mahabharata, in the great Indian scriptures, there is a story where there's a little being in the womb called Abhimanyu, and he hears someone talking to the mother about a maze which is an impossible maze to solve, from which one only gets lost. And yet, when he heard the solution of the maze through the mother's womb, he remembered it. But while the person was saying the solution of the maze to come out of the womb, the baby in the womb slept and did not absorb it. So that's why, even after being born and during Mahabharata, when he grew up and when he went to war, he could remember how to go in somehow, and somehow he could not come out. This tells us that it is not just mere coincidence that a baby knew how the mother felt when she heard the story, and that's how he knew how to get in and out of the maze. It begins in the womb. Every value that you want to instill in your child begins with the womb. And there are many, many ways to do this. Like I said, there's mantra chanting for specific reasons. All the mantras or all the chants that you know in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, they come at a certain frequency. And that frequency changes your neural pathways in a certain way, which makes the baby more intelligent, more calm, more composed, and more happy. Many other tools as well, like meditation, figure therapy, color therapy, even water therapy. All these things, all these tools, daily affirmation, gratitude, journaling, and even mindfulness. Just being aware of where your emotions are leading you, where they're coming from, and to kind of break the generational cycle and only give the best to your baby.
Absolutely. And there are evidences now available that talk about babies having implicit memories from the womb, and there are studies available for that. So probably there could be facts which could vouch for what you're just saying. However, it just makes me wonder that the kids do carry, because you mentioned intergenerational information or patterns, right? So kids do carry intelligence from the genes.
Absolutely.
So they would have the wisdom that has been passed down through the ancestors, through the DNA, through the genes. Can parenting in the womb make a difference there? If you already have certain intelligence which is stored in your genes, what can you do to alter that or to modify that by inculcating it in the womb?
It's a great question. And it all comes down to a very, very simple and a very, very simple yet a very complicated topic from science, which is called epigenetics. Something which is in your genes is genetic, but coming out of it, pulling yourself, and because you have so much influence on your baby, pulling the baby out of it is epigenetics. That's when all of, for example, if my family has a history of diabetes and I don't want that particular thing in my child, or if my family has a history of maybe baldness and I want my baby with fuller hair, anything, just a small example, you can always talk to the baby in such a way, like I said, just simple affirmations like you are healthy, your heart is healthy, you are a pure body, you are pure energy, just these things. Do not talk to them in a negative way. Do not talk to the baby in a negative way that you will never get diabetes. No. Tell them that you are healthy. Do not even go to the knots. Just tell them what they are, and automatically you have a head full of hair, for example. Just these little things, they make a lot of difference. And also, it's a very age old technique again, but pregnant mothers are always advised to look at pictures of other small cute babies, so your babies turn out to be cuter. So that's something that they do. It's a very silly little thing, but I have personally experienced it. There was a little cartoon image of a child, and I would just look at it. And when I was pregnant, I would just look at it, and I would think, this is such a beautiful child. Like, I would just think that, maybe my child would be so pretty. And I forgot about it. And just a few days back in my old laptop, when I was trying to recover some data, I found that picture again, and I was shocked that it looked so much like Vian. I was so shocked because I had almost forgotten about it. I had no memory of what that child looked like. It was just a cartoon image, but I was like, wow. And it was once again a proof for me that that a mother carrying a child is so powerful. She controls more than 100% of the baby's karma, of the baby's mind, soul, and body.
Maybe that was just old wives' tale of manifestation, because the way you say it, it was like I manifested exactly how he looks.
Different terms in different cultures. Buddhism has even the period post delivery, which is the Japa period, as they call it in India. In China, they have a 40-day period of confinement where they have places, they have specific places where they can go and have their confinement, where everything is taken care of so that the mother and the baby are stress free. So I feel that we as a civilization, we have some ancient wisdom that has just branched out, and now it's just called different things, but they actually come from the same source, like the whole universe in a peanut.
Yeah. And epigenetics, for example, is a great proof of that, because up until now, science didn't believe it. But with the rise in the study of epigenetics, we are kind of finding evidences into these old wives' tales and the ancient wisdom that have been there in the mythological scriptures, right?
And now that fetal medicine is being studied so much, now more so than ever, that scientists are backing traditional practices and traditional scriptures in a way that has never been done before.
Yes. But when you mention epigenetics, of course, trauma comes to my mind, because along with epigenetics comes the passing of intergenerational trauma. So while you gave such a nice relatable example of baldness or diabetes that can pass through genes, is there a way how you could explain that even the passing or breaking of the cycle of trauma can be managed through?
Yes. See, when we talk about intergenerational trauma, it has been passed through to us up to 7 generations, right? That's a total of, I think, 4,000 and odd ancestors, if I'm not wrong. And when we talk about when we talk about generational stress, or when we talk about transgenerational trauma, we have to understand that it is a process that does not happen at a snap of a finger, and that it takes a
Lost you again.
steps taken towards it. When we talk about transgenerational stress or trauma, it is something that is passed on to us for a long time now. It is almost as if it's in our blood. But having said that, it is possible to break the cycle. But the only thing that we need is a lot of patience and consistent work. We need to consciously practice, we need to consciously make amends to our behavior. And to make amends to our behavior, first, we need to like introspect and look at our behavioral patterns. Sometimes it's very easy to put ourselves on a pedestal and say, like, empathize or sympathize with ourselves. But putting ourselves in the spotlight and trying to understand where our behavioral patterns are going wrong, and not just admitting to yourself but taking corrective action, is a very slow and an intentional process which will take time, and we need to accept that. Don't be hard on yourself and don't try to change everything in a day, because it's not going to happen. It's something that takes work and time, and with meditation, with again chanting, just being with yourself, focusing on your breath, that's what will finally help. But there is victory for us all in the end.
That's absolutely true. Before we wrap this up, would you like to share any personal aha moments that you discovered that, hey, that happened with me and my kid? Something that I didn't want to do or I did want to do, I achieved it or I changed it. Would you like to share personal victories in this regard?
Absolutely. There were many. Sometimes you always have moments of self doubt where, like, no, is this even working? What am I doing? But then these are the testing times where you need to take that leap of faith, and you need to know that what you're doing is coming from the inside, and it is there to truly enlighten your way. I always wanted my child to be kind, be a giver, to be compassionate towards everybody, and not look at people differently. I wanted him to treat everybody equally when he grows up, not judging them by their money or by their anything else for that matter. And when I see him today, I see him playing with everybody and sharing his toys, even though he wants it. He wants a particular car, but he will offer it to his friend in class first. And I see these little things and I feel really satisfied, and I feel like I feel the little victories of motherhood, and it's really beautiful to see. So I'm grateful, very grateful for that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Is there something that you can share that you wanted to teach your baby in the womb and you can already see him expressing it now in his life? Could be a personality trait, could be an attitude, could be a habit. Is there something that you would like to share?
There's nothing so specific, but it's just I just wanted a very happy child, and I knew exactly what I wanted, like in terms of how I see his future. But I see him on those right paths. I see him walking those ways. I see him being the man that I wanted him to be.
That's amazing. Would you like to share a tip to parents who already have delivered kids and may now be feeling like, did we miss the boat? Parents who have already delivered their kids, they're not pregnant. So sometimes they may feel, oh my God, I didn't do it when my baby was in the womb. So did I miss the boat? Is it too late for me?
It's never too late. See, of course, when you can control, when the clay is like clay, you can mold it as however you want, in whatever way you want. But when it gets a little more, then you just have to like work around it. You have to, you can always, that's why you're here for us, and that's why you help us with conscious parenting. So, but of course, there are ways. A child is still a little child who can absorb everything. Our Guruji says that a baby until 6 years is like a sponge. He will soak in everything that you give him, good or bad. So it's never too late. And of course, you can have more children.
This one didn't turn out the way I wanted to. Let's manifest another one. That's amazing. But it's great that there's always scope for repair after every rupture. So there's always hope.
Yes. For us, it's never too late. You're learning until you're dying. So until
Yes.
you're dead, you're learning.
Yes.
Never too late for anything.
Right. So to wrap it up, would you like to give any quick tip or any short mantra or a mnemonic, something for the listeners to take away as, hey, that's how I remember that I must be taking care of my child right from the womb?
Well, like I said, in today's society, in today's generation, we need kids. We need kids who will turn into adults, and we will need people who will save the world, save the earth. So the sky's the limit. Make your kid special, and it's all in your hand.
I may be overstepping and this could be a little personal, but would you be okay to share the source of your wisdom and your knowledge
Of course.
regarding this?
Course, my guru is Gurudev Sri Praveen Rishiji Maharsa, and he made me a teacher. He trained me to be a teacher in Arham Garbh Sanskar, which is where I learned all of these things and so much more, which I can never be grateful enough for him for sharing so much with me. It has really changed my life, and you must inculcate these little practices. It makes a great difference in the journey of motherhood.
Okay, thank you so much, Ayushi, for being so open and generous and sharing such wisdom with details and openness. Thank you so much.
So much for having me. It was lovely. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was truly wonderful having this great conversation with you. I hope this helps many, many people. And I hope I learned a lot from you as well. So thank you for that as well. Thank you.
If you liked this episode, please do share and subscribe. Share it with your friends and folks who would benefit by listening to this, viewing this. And do leave your comments or reviews so that we know what else can we do to make this experience better for you guys. Show your love. Thank you so much.